All right, in this example, we have an application problem. So we have a little bit of a word problem here. It's a sine graph, and we're going to get a whole bunch of information from it. So this really isn't too difficult as long as we understand what the A and the B and the C and the D values do. And let's just dive in and see how it goes. So the population estimate of grasshoppers after t weeks, where 0 is less than or equal to t, which is less than or equal to 12, is given by this function here. P of t equals 7,500 plus 3,000 times the sine of pi t over 8. First thing we want to do is sketch a graph of the function and then answer the following. So we got a whole bunch of questions here. Why don't we attack one at a time? But first, let's make a little bit of a graph. So that if I want to make a graph, probably the first few things that I'll do is I'll grab what the most important information is. So right away, this value, it might look like, you might want to think it's the A value because it comes first, but it's being added to my sine function. So this is actually my D value. D is 7,500, which means that my midline is at y equals 7,500. All right, so that's helpful. Next, I have an A value of 3,000. So that means that that's my amplitude is 3,000. And then I have a B value of pi over 8. So that means that my period is going to equal 2 pi over pi over 8. Well, if I multiply by the reciprocal here, 8 over pi and 8 over pi, this will cancel in the denominator, and so this is going to be 2 pi over 1 times 8 over pi, and so it looks like this is going to equal 16 as my period. And actually, you know what I should do is I should specify that this isn't just an arbitrary 16. We have a value for t. This is weeks. So the 16 weeks is going to be the period. And so what that means essentially is that it takes 16 weeks for this grasshopper population to reach the beginning of its cycle again. Okay, so next up, we have gotten the important information. There's no phase shift, so I'm going to actually start at the midline. And now let's start to put this to a graph. So I'm going to get some nice straight lines, and I'm going to sketch something like this. We're only dealing with positive values, and I can just label this any way I like, really. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, on the y or x-axis, I'm going to call this weeks. So I'm going to take it out to, now here's an important piece of information. I'm graphing this only from 0 to 12. So already I can see that there's a little bit of an issue that I'm not going to go through a full period. And that's okay. So that's 0, 1, those are my 12 weeks. And then for my midline and amplitude, I'm going to build my y-axis. So this is going to be a population. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually start by noting my midline as 7,500. And I think population, you're going to have to move. Yeah, there we go. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go 3,000 above and 3,000 below and mark that on my graph. So we can just arbitrarily call this, that's 3,000 above, so 10,500. And then this will be 3,000 below, so 4,500. And that's okay to do. And really, if we want to be really specific or really precise with these graphs, which we should be, I should really do one of these little breaks in the graph here, just to show that I'm not actually scaling it from 0 to 45, but I have actually a break in the graph. All right, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to sketch out my midline. So let's do something like this. Here is my midline. And actually, let's make that a little bit thinner. Perfect. Okay. Now, before I can just start going, I do know one thing about where this graph will, or what points I could plot. And I know that I'm going to start at the midline at the first week. But then there's a question of, well, where is the next point? I know I'm going up. Is it after 1 week? Is it after 2 weeks? So really what I need to do is take a look at this period, and I need to find my key interval. Remember that key interval is you get by chopping up this period into 4 sections. So what I can do then is I can take 16, divide by 4, and so that means my key interval is 4 weeks. So all of my like critical values or the key points on this are going to be every 4 weeks. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Here's one of them. 1, 2, 3, 4. Here's one of them. 1, 2, 3, 4. Here's one of them. So now we can follow that sine pattern. So I start at the midline. I go up to my max. I go back down to my midline, and then down to my minimum. And that's as far as this graph is taking me. So I'm going to make a smooth curve. This is just from 0 to 12, and it's something like this. Now it feels kind of awkward to like not finish the period, but that's what all that this problem is asking us to do. So this is a good graph. Now based off of this graph, we can answer a whole bunch of those answers or those questions from before.